Good evening. My name is Harry Fisher. Calling to order the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, Monday, March 24th at 6:36. Would you all rise and join me in the pledge, please? Okay, thank you. First item on our agenda is an executive session. So I would take a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Self moved. Who seconded? Mr. Alfano seconded. Is there any objection to going into executive session? Seeing none, we go into an
6:37 p.m.
6:37 p.m. So I would ask our guests to step outside, please. I think Leo should step outside too.
Yeah, she's gonna be the minute taker.
Oh,
Okay, unless anybody objects, what do you think? It's all looking.
okay, all right. I should have
She won't say anything.
thought of that before.
Somebody should, can we check with, because I see audio and video on.
Microphone. We've come out of executive session at 6:44. The only vote taken during executive session was to exit executive session.
You might repeat it so that goes on the record.
The only vote taken was to exit executive session.
And the vote was moved by Karen Castellanos.
And it was moved by Karen Fasliotis and seconded by Mr. Selps to come out of executive session. Next on the agenda is the assessor's report, but as I think everybody knows, the assessor is on vacation this week. You've got a written report in the packet, and I think it's all pretty clear. So next on the agenda is request.
So I move that we accept the assessor's report? That's what we
We're
normally
not
do.
really having one.
Well, we have a written report.
We have a
I guess
written report.
all right, we'll accept the written report.
I'll second.
So it's been moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Fasliotis to accept the assessor's written report. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's 12-0-0. Okay, request for budget adjustments. We have one routine application, PD4 in the police department, $49,323.40. Approval to use for overtime and mechanical supplies. This is a grant from the state. May I have a motion to?
So I'll give a motion to approve PD4 for the police department for $49,323.40, as you've just said.
Seconded by Mr. Alfano? Okay. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's approved 12-0-0. Next are the non-routine applications. We have SE 8, which is a request of the selectmen for $50,000 additional appropriation for the RFP consultant. And assisting us tonight, we have Mark Johnson. Welcome back to the other side of the table, former BET member, and the town administrator, Kate Bush. Push the button.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been back here, and I'm not going to embarrass the one person on the BET that was here when I was here 10 years ago. I'll leave that up for you guys to all decide. But it's nice to be here. What I'd like to start off by doing is telling you who's on the committee for this evaluation for the redevelopment of the Havmeyer building. We have one current BET member, and that's David Weisbrod, and three former BET members. Andy Deuce, who's the chair of our committee, Bill Finger, and myself. We have two current Board of Ed people, Karen Hirsch and Sophie Coven, and one past BOE, Joe Kelly. The three other members are Dev Hawley, who's got an extensive background in commercial development, David Kubik, who lives in Riverside, but he works for an architectural firm in New York City. And the last is Carol Acuno. A couple fun facts about the Havemeyer building. It was built in the 1890s on 2.7 acres. It served as the first high school in the town of Greenwich. And then, as we all know, has been the Board of Ed offices for a very long time. There's 53,787 square feet to the building, which includes the basement and the attic. It's in the central Greenwich business zone. Given the ratios and all that for that zone, somebody could potentially put in a building of FAR of over 105,000 square feet. The recent assessment is $32.4 million for the land and $12.5 for the building. If you bring that up, given the usual discounts, the market value is 46.3 and 17.9 for a total of $64 million. So our charge has been to evaluate the town's RFP number 7871 for the redevelopment of the Havemeyer building and make recommendations to the first selectman. Today, we've worked with the purchasing department to write an RFP. They then issued that through various channels of communication to all potential developers across the country. Our committee is working under the confidentiality rules of the purchasing department, so I really can't get into the number of responses we got or how many developers we've brought back for interviews and additional questions. But we have talked to a number of them at a fair amount of length. What I'd like to do is read basically the first paragraph in the RPF to kind of give you an idea of the parameters that we're looking for that are important. And I'll quote this. The town is looking for a developer who will provide a high-quality vision and commercial proposal for the redevelopment and long-term use of the property. The town encourages respondents to submit creative proposals that generate strong economic activities and meaningful community uses that together will benefit the town of Greenwich and the residents of Greenwich. These proposals should capture the historic significance of the building and its architecture, consider new additions or enhancements that are compatible with the existing building and immediate site, and conform to the existing surrounding area and neighborhoods. In addition to providing sufficient on-site parking for the proposed project, providing additional public parking would be beneficial to the town. Respondents can propose multiple options for the development if they fit the criteria as outlined in this RFP. The town's preference is for a long-term lease on the entire property. So I can tell you that we've been pleased with the quality and creativity of a number of the proposals. However, they all have presented different scenarios of compensation to the town. Some have long-term leases with annual payments. Others have cash up front. It's very difficult to compare apples to apples. In addition, we need to better understand the economic viability of each of the proposals. And there are a number of very different proposals. We also need to consider temporary and permanent options for the location of the Board of Ed central offices. Now, ideally, the town will not have to pay anything to develop the site. The whole idea is we get lease payments as revenues back to the town. However, the town would be obligated to cover lease expenses for the new BOE location. At this point, neither the committee nor employees of the town have knowledge of the true value of the land, building, or potential uses to make informed recommendations. We need to hire an outside consultant with detailed knowledge and experience in property evaluations, leases, buyouts, future property tax benefits, and the type of use is most appropriate. So one example, if we wanted to kind of figure out the highest and best value for that property, the consultant would help us do that. In my own little mind, I could tell you, well, what's the highest value we might be able to get? Well, if FAR allows 105,000 acre building, or excuse me, 105,000 square feet, if it's a 105,000 square foot office building, that's not going to serve any of the town benefits, you know, of community uses and all that. But we do want to get a value for what that might be. But then we'll look at the trade-offs for that highest price by what's going to generate strong economic activities for downtown, meaningful community uses, preservation of the historic site and building, and additional public parking. Our rough timeline, there is some urgency as potential developers are not going to wait around for typical towns' long-term planning process. We we've already interviewed 3 consultants. We have a pretty good idea who we'd like to use, but of course we have not asked for any proposals because we don't have any funding right now. So we hope to have, assuming they get funded, hope to have results of the one we choose by later on in April. We then will meet with the top 2 or 3 respondents to negotiate better terms. Hopefully by the end of May. The purchasing department then will get back involved, help out with some of the negotiations with one of those proposals. And that'll get us to our full final recommendation and hopefully the best option for the town, both monetarily and the benefits that it's described. Of course, later on this fall, we would have the town attorney start doing more work on a lease or buyout or whatever, whatever it might be. Sorry. We can then have public meetings, MI application, all that could happen next fall. So to kind of summarize, we've had a great committee of people from many different leadership positions on boards and commissions within the town. We've all worked well together and hard together. We have some really good proposals from developers with deep experience in Greenwich. So what we do need help in is a consultant to help assure that we have the best proposal for the town. So I appreciate your consideration and hope you can find a way to give us the appropriation so we can keep moving on with this worthy endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions from anybody on my right? Yep, Mr. Cowell.
Thank you for that presentation. My question is, how did you arrive at the $50,000 number? Do you think that's sufficient? Do you have some indication from, the guys, the consultants or people that you've been conferring with that
Yeah, good question.
that's adequate for us to get the kind of study that you're talking about?
Yeah, we interviewed the 3 consultants last week, and all 3 came back somewhere $30,000 to $40,000. Now, we haven't gotten the formal proposals, but we feel pretty comfortable that $50,000 is going to be good for a consultant.
Mr. Selps?
So in your presentation, you said that the site would allow for a building of 100,000 FAR square feet, I think you said. What's the size of the existing facility? I'm just trying to picture in my mind the mass of a new structure against what that might be.
53,878 square feet.
So roughly twice.
So roughly twice the size. of
Thank you
what's
very
there.
much.
Yeah, Mr. Holchak.
Thank you. Are you contemplating taking down the existing building, or are you thinking of keeping that building and adding development to it?
That's not for us to do or to recommend. We hope the building's going to stay there because it is a historic building. It's in a historic district.
Is that a prerequisite, though?
We haven't said that in the RFP, but I can tell you, of all the different proposals we've had, they all want to keep the building, renovate it, enhance it. There's a couple that want to add some additions in the back, which it's in a kind of an open courtyard in the back of it. But no, I mean, we really hope that the building's going to stay. The other thing we hope for is that open ground, open space. I mean, there's 2.7 acres. And, you know, that's perfect for that part of town, you know, to be able to walk
But
around.
I'm just trying to understand the constraints that you are putting. So on the one hand, I hear you saying you hope. On the other hand, I don't hear a constraint. So is the town open? What's the town open to?
Well, I think that's part of the next stage of negotiations, is once we select say the one or two that we really want to continue talking to, then we get down to the nitty gritty. Okay, you know, here's your plan. We like all these parts of it. We think the lease should be higher, or this should be changed, or this and that. Certainly when we get to the point of, when the town gets to the point of signing a lease, if that's what happens, you'll put in contingencies. You know, you are not to take down the building. You have to maintain a certain amount of open space. So that's going to be a,
I guess I'm still a little unclear. What are you asking for in the RFP? What are you looking for? Are you looking for someone to come up with a plan on what's the highest and best use for the development? I mean, because as you yourself mentioned just a few moments ago, the most cost-effective thing for the town to do would be to take the building down and build 105,000 square feet of new space, whether it's office or condos or whatever. But I'm not sure what you're asking for.
so the consultant will come in and do a financial analysis, and there'll be a lot of pieces to it. So one of the things we don't know is if proposal A says, we'll lease for 49 years, we're going to give you $1 million a year towards that lease. Is that a good lease? Not a good lease. We don't know what that property is worth from a 49-year lease. If it's a 99-year lease, which we've had a couple of proposals for, what should that be? Should that be discounted? What's the net present value? We can probably figure that out. It's more the financial part of it. What's the land really worth? None of us want to have a 105,000 square foot building put up. We want to preserve the historic building, and we want to have open space. We want to have a couple different uses, some of them community-based. We've got those proposals with some of that stuff. So far, we feel we're in a pretty good spot. But until we know better what to expect, what to ask for, I mean, we haven't really started negotiating. If somebody said, well, we'll give you $10 million up front for the 99-year lease, that sounds very low to me, but we don't know for sure, you know, what to expect. And that's why we need a consultant who's got background in buildings like this. I mean, a lot of communities across the U.S. have done downtown regeneration. You know, they've done a lot of these things. There's a lot of information about that. And that'll help guide us as to what a good deal is for the town.
Ms. Aurora?
Just building upon what Elliot was saying, Mark, there's two things. One is, you know, are the proposals that are in front of you today, are they even viable, right? Are they something that the community would want? And then the second would be, are they financially something that makes sense, right? So are all the proposals that are in front of you right now viable? Because I would think that the role of the committee is in some sense to assess, you know, these 3 or 4, how many ever different proposals you have, and say, all right, 1 and 2 make sense, 3 and 4, the town would never agree to, even if they're financially viable, we don't really want to be, we're not interested in those. So are all the proposals in front of you?
So there's a few that we really like. I'll leave it at that. Financially, we're not sure,
So your,
again.
the consultant is really just to assess the financial
Yeah,
viability?
yeah. And we'll show them a couple of the proposals.
And is there any skill set within the existing committee to help? I mean, I'm just trying to, it seems to me that the consultant is I don't know if it's replacing some of the existing expertise, because the committee seems to be constructed with some real estate experience, some financial experience, some Board of Ed, buy-in.
We do have some of our own experience. There's 3 or 4 of us that are real estate developers. I mean, I do more residential in town.
Yeah.
But I don't feel comfortable trying to guess myself, what the best deal is. One of these consultants, one of their partners has big experience in the hospitality area. So if somebody's proposing, restaurants or a hotel, what does that mean versus if it were to be a few offices in the Havemeyer building or condos or, whatever? We're going to make sure the consultants can address each of those different uses.
And is it, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a clause within the Havemeyer contract, like some, that it has to be related to education and the repurposing of that building within the Havemeyer donation whenever it happened, how many ever years ago? So that is definitely going to be fulfilled within all proposals, whatever that.
Yeah, I can't speak to that directly because I joined, so there was originally the Havemeyer Advisory Committee who looked at a lot of different things and looked at that. Andy Deuce was also head of that committee. He could answer that more appropriately. But given that they recommended we go out and look at all types of proposals means they thought they could get by that
Oh, I see.
trust clause or whatever.
And one more question, sorry, to assure there is no conflict, right, in the sense that none of the developers or the proposals that are in front of you, none of them have recommended any of these consultants?
Oh, no, not at all.
They're all completely independent?
More from within our committee.
And you did 2 RFPs, one for the actual proposal and one for the consultant?
We did not do an RFP for the consultants, but there was probably 6 or 7 that people had thrown out names. I mean, David himself knew a couple people in New York City, large consulting firms, but we checked to make sure there was no conflict, that they weren't doing work for 1 or 2 or 3 of the.
And wouldn't we be required to do an RFP for the consultant? Or no?
I don't think so. Okay.
Under certain circumstances, we could solicit single source or sole source, but we also might have time to do an RFP if we choose to.
Mr. Deschamps.
Thank you. I may have missed this in your opening presentation. I apologize if I did, but did this go to a vote with your committee?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm glad you brought that up. Given the diversity of our committee and different backgrounds and all that, I'm proud to say that last Wednesday, we voted 7-0-0 to forward this to the BET and then to the RTM.
Thank you.
So we're all behind
So
it.
unanimity on the vote? 7-0-0?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Jansen, please.
Okay. Generally, I'm very supportive of this concept. I think it's a wonderful thing for this Class A location with Class A building to have a repurposed concept. I'm uncomfortable that nothing is in writing. Everything you have just described is verbal, and I'm accustomed to having some time to absorb all this data and all this information, and I'm wondering why there isn't anything in writing proposed to us. There was no packet associated with this, because for me personally, I don't have historical information other than what I've seen from a presentation to the Board of Ed a year ago, which had no information packet either. So when they were presented by the chair of the committee with the first selectman, there was no packet. And so here we are again a year later, and there is no packet. And it would be helpful to know the timeline, particularly, for example, hearing what public hearings, when they're planned and how it gets involved. I mean, I understand there's a financial analysis, but I do think that public input, given this particular space, it's such a
We totally agree. It's gotta be
landmark
public-
area.
Public meetings.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So-
think a lot of
yeah.
that is due to the fact that we're under the confidentiality of the purchasing department. Each of the meetings we've had, we've immediately gone into executive session, had our discussions, had our interviews, we've met with the respondents, and then came out of executive session. So it's
Okay.
really a purchasing thing, so that, nobody gets inside information to bid higher than somebody else by $1 or something.
Right.
So I think that's a lot of it. We're not trying to hide anything. We're still early in the process. And, I should highlight that RFP, request for proposal, this is not a request for a bid. It's really, we wanted to see how creative people were out there with some different ideas. And we were pretty happy with the responses that came in. So now we're just trying to keep going down the road, narrow it down to, maybe 2 of the proposals. But now we need to get the financial advice to know what really is good and negotiate a little bit more, then make our recommendation for the one proposal to the first selectman, who then can start running through all the, and then there'll be another committee, I don't know whether all of us will be on it or other people. Then we can start doing all the open meetings and going for the MI and sharing a lot more information, especially what the proposal is that we've accepted. I mean, that's going to be all out in the open.
Okay.
But for purposes of this, it's purchasing department confidentiality.
Okay, so if I could follow up. So there was a report delivered 2 years ago, November 21st, 2023, that did describe a key element, which is that the first selectman is proposing that the town pay in perpetuity the cost of the Board of Ed move to another location. Is that still a key component, and is that part of your financial analysis in this scenario?
That's not, we know we're going to do that. I mean, Fred has made it clear that, we're obligated to pay the Board of Ed to move and to find a location for them and to pay for that location. I mean, that's the latest that I've heard about all this. So that's all part of the total package, yes.
Okay, because at that point, it was discussed as about $3 million per year. And as I understand it, the Board of Ed was mixed in their response to the concept and to the ideas. And I know that the Board of Ed is part of your committee, which is great. I guess it's that there hasn't been discussion at a Board of Ed level. Was there a Board of Ed vote at all with what you're
No,
proposing?
because we're still under confidentiality.
Okay,
But that'll go to the Board of Ed, certainly. But by
Okay.
having Karen Hirsch and Sophie Coven, current BOE people, it's great that we've built consensus. I mean,
Okay.
they're certainly making sure that the Board of Ed is well taken care of.
okay. So just to confirm what I heard, you're saying that the town has committed to paying in perpetuity the operating cost of the move. And in the report that was written in November 2023, it was about 20,000 square feet, 100 employees, plus another 10 for the facility side. So 30,000 square feet for the Board of Ed.
That number sounds right, and that is along our estimates. That was a different committee.
Okay,
That was the predecessor to this committee, the
Okay.
advisory committee to the first selectman, so that's not something we did.
right.
But-
Yeah, and so that really speaks to, it's great that there's public documents out there and someone like me can piece it together, but it's very helpful if there would, because there is 2 separate committees, 2 different types of votes being taken.
But that committee was disbanded.
I hear
That's
you,
out
and
of-
there was a vote, and
Yeah.
but there is no historical document that brings up to speed a person like me on the BET, other than me pulling this all together, finding a report here and minutes there, and it's very difficult. So quite honestly, I personally would feel much more comfortable had there been how this 50,000 would be spent, what, you're mentioning now that there are 3 bids,
Not bids, but just 3 people we interviewed.
3 people that you interviewed, and what would be the timeline going forward, and just something in writing that gives the direction. So, thank you.
Mr. Alfano?
What was the genesis of the project?
This has been going on for 20 years, what to do about the Board of Ed building. asbestos, crumbling walls. I mean, I don't have to, you got enough people here from the Board of Ed that are in that building. If, when I mentioned there was 53,000 square feet, and the needs right now have been communicated to us of 20 to 21,000 square feet, the building's way too big and it's in very bad shape. I mean, frankly, it's been discussed within the committee, and we've met with the town, I don't know if he's a town engineer or somebody who took us through from the DPW and showed us all the different, I mean, you go up in the attic, I wouldn't want to put anybody up there. So we know that's on a short timeline, and that's why we want to get them out and find something. Now, one of the things we're going to do too is kind of parallel with these proposals, there are a couple of proposals that talk about what to do with the Board of Ed building, a Board of Ed building. We also want to go out, I mean, Andy Deuce and I just talked about this the other day, go out with a commercial broker just to get a feel for what's available on the market. And I think some of that work's already been done. Some people were out maybe a year ago, there's a building across the street that might be available or was available. That'll help us give information. Okay, what is a 20,000 square foot house, building? What's the annual lease payments, or to buy it? What's that going to cost?
Is there any consideration to the town remodeling the building and keeping it?
That'd be really expensive. And that's why the idea
Are we looking
here-
into how expensive it'll be?
Don't know. Somebody may, Andy Deuce may know, but better to let some developer take over a lease, give us a long-term lease, pay for that themselves, turn it into a very useful project for the town. That allows us to also consider what to do with the Board of Ed. If they also are not offering an option for a Board of Ed location. And one developer has offered a couple other locations. So again, I'm getting too much into the details that I shouldn't from a confidentiality standpoint, but that's why we're pretty excited about, the people we've talked to, and some of them are Greenwich-based, who understand the town.
Thank you.
Ms. Vasiliotis, please.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little troubled with the process and also on the documentation side, but when I'll speak to, for example, the Cohen Civic Center in Old Greenwich, the first thing that the advisory committee did was we solicited input from the public as to what does the public want in the facility. And this does not seem to have been done in this case. It seems as though this committee is working on proposals that 7 people think are great, but there's been no consideration for public input as to, maybe there's totally a different idea that the public wants for this space. Does the public necessarily want development on a 2.7 acre, or do they appreciate the open space? It's troubling to me that you have no, it's not for the committee to say that, to keep the building or not keep the building, especially when you haven't had any public input. So I think that that's the first part of it that I'm troubled with this whole process. The second part of it is, again, you're asking for $50,000, but you seem to have already done the work and narrowed down the consultant. You might have a sole source, you might not. It didn't sound like you had the time to do an RFP. I just don't know exactly, what we're approving here. And I have a difficult time giving a rubber stamp to a $50,000 cost when, I'll be honest, getting hard time on an RFP for an HR study that, that has had a lot of public, at least discourse in the preparation of it. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around the ask, and I'm having trouble understanding, what we're actually approving here.
Well, again, I think it's important for us to get a little bit of a financial analysis of what to expect the value of some of the property, of some of the buildings that if the building was renovated into certain uses, what that would how much that would generate.
Yeah,
in terms
but
of
no
income.
disrespect, it's kind of like the cart leading the horse when you don't really have a consensus from a use or, an idea of what the community would like with respect to this property. I mean, we've gone through a lot of iterations. I mean, there was one proposal once to have it as an arts center that, got royally, torpedoed. I've been hearing things that, well, maybe that would be the appropriate thing to have here. Maybe it's something else, but there's been no community consensus as to what we want to be done with this building, if anything. I don't even know, if people want anything done to the building or whether they want to preserve it. Again, I get troubled by saying it's not for the committee to say what happens with the building. We're just getting all the information and then we'll present it, I guess, sometime in the future and then see what lands. It just seems to be a backward process.
If I might, the previous committee, and I can't speak to what kind of meetings they had, but their final report concluded that the Board of Ed, we should consider relocating the school's administrative staff out of the building, and that we should probably repurpose the Havemeyer building. It said, concurrent with the search for alternative space, the town should begin the process for a potential repurposing of the Havemeyer building. The committee recommends the establishment of a new committee to assist with the preparation of and the evaluation of responses to requests for proposals for the Havemeyer building. And that was what was done. And now we're at the point where we need to know, are the proposals that we have viable, that we can actually present them to the public, seek input on one or two or three of those proposals, and know the financials behind them. I appreciate that, a lot has been held close to the vest because of the confidentiality requirements of the RFP process, but we can't move any further along without this appropriation.
Just to finish
Yep.
the one thought you had, Karen. I will say one of the proposals had a fair amount of their proposal was a community theater. And one of the first things we thought about is, okay, they do that, and then 5 years down the road, they're not making money, and it goes belly up. The community theater itself. What you talked about that was looked at 20 years ago, that leaves us in a bad situation. They would repurpose the building or whatever by whoever holds the lease. At least we would know, and that's something we can ask the consultant, okay, a community theater, how much money do they need to generate to pay the taxes of what's going to be in there? And how does that proposal look like compared to some other use that goes into that?
I think you're missing my point, though, and just to go back to that report, okay, that was a report, but again, at no time or place has there been a public hearing to say, okay, we're thinking of renovating the Havemeyer building or leasing the Havemeyer or doing something with it. What does the community want to see here? Do we want to have it torn down and have an office building there? Do we want, before we go through all this time and expense of consultants and all the rest of it, I mean, you're going to generate 3 or 4 proposals presented to the public. What if the public thinks all of these ideas are absolutely ridiculous? We're going to be $100,000 because we've already spent $50,000 on that report, on an RFP. For a request for. Now we're going to spend another $50,000, $100,000 for proposals that may or may not see fruition. I think we're doing, again, the cart before the horse, and I just don't really get the whole purpose.
Well, again, I appreciate what you're saying, and I understand, but we will have public meetings. We will bring this open to the public. I think people are going to like 1 or 2 of the proposals that we push forward. There's still time for public input and to change it based on what the public's saying. If they really don't care about the building itself, I'm sure a developer would love to tear it down and do something new. We're saying we want to keep the historic structure. It's a historic historic district. And I think the committee before us already viewed a lot of this and gave us a parameter.
Didn't you just tell Mr. Alchek that it's not for the committee to say whether or not the building comes down or not? So,
Maybe I wasn't clear enough about that. When we get to the next stages of negotiating with a couple of the proposers, the respondents, yeah, we're going to get down and say, okay, you say you're not going to tear down the building, okay, that's now going to be a part of the agreement. I mean,
Ms. Moriarty?
First, I don't think this board put this item on the agenda, so I'd like to make the motion to approve the additional appropriation of $50,000. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, moved by Ms. Moriarty, SE 8, seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Anybody else have?
I have comments.
And you have a comment,
I just wanted to
okay.
put that on the floor.
But if it's not on the agenda, it requires a vote of 2/3 of the.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
Oh, it wasn't moved, is what you're saying.
Correct. It just wasn't moved. Couple comments. I mean, there's a cart before the horse regardless which way you go. In many of these RFP initiatives that have come out of the First Selectman's office, we've faced that problem. We've had Island Beach, we've had Roger Sherman Baldwin Park, and it's hard for the public to opine on what you want to do with it unless you have hard proposals out there. On the other hand, it's hard to define the proposals without knowing what the parameters are. So there's no easy way to go about this. And we didn't start the process. It came out of the First Selectman. Comments that, you know, if we look in our capital budget, the Board of Ed right now has $24.8 million to upgrade the Havemeyer building for its office uses. I know that the First Selectman has said, he's walked developers around there, said this is at least $50 million. So some of this is a financial issue. Some of it is also the repurposing of an asset in the center of town. And, you know, my personal view is I would like to see public school administration in owned space, not in rental space. I think it eliminates market risk and financial issues as you go down the road. But that's part of what you're looking at as well, and that'll come out of the agreements. But it seems to me that whether I agree with the repurposing or not, you need information. This project has been started. You're asking this consultant to give you a real valuation of that property to be able to estimate whether the proposals you're getting are fair to the town. I think this board has been through this once before when we looked at the air rights over at the train station, where we were trying to negotiate without understanding value, and it took getting a consultant expert in this area to understand the value that we had there. So it's an uncomfortable place to be in the sense that we're not really sure what we're shooting for, but we know where we are, and we don't know what people want, but with public assets. But I think you do need to give somebody an issue of what's possible, because you hold these public meetings, what would you like there? We'll get a universe of wonderful ideas, many of which are not practical, aren't possible, we don't have support for. So I'm in favor of supporting this now. I like the fact that it's going to the RTM. If the RTM doesn't want to pursue this, we'll find that out if they don't support the $50,000. If they don't pursue. So I think it's a way to actually limit exposure in terms of time and effort on a path that may or may not be supported down the road. And there is a lot of time between now and signing an agreement, and a lot has to happen, including public hearings, including more specifics and detailed negotiation. So I just would make the case to my colleagues that this is an initiative that wasn't started by us, but it is talking about a financial commitment that we need to make either in the building to maintain it, because we've been deferring expenses for at least 5, if not 7 years. We keep taking that money out of the budget, and that building is getting less and less viable to be maintained as office space currently. Thank you. So I just
Ms. Tarkington.
So I just make one comment to Ms. Moriarty's. I thought that we had done some basic and very important appropriations for roof and a new roof and new boiler system, but there are many other things that need to be done. There's no question about that. So, you know, I just wanted to make the point that we thought it was important to preserve the building. We have made those kind of expenditures. But I wanted to say a couple of other things. I mean, this was brought before the Budget Committee this morning. We haven't
had a Budget Committee report as such, although we now have this on the agenda. One of the things that I brought up was, we talked a little bit about FAR and what could be done. And I think Mark has done some additional work, missed 3 asterisks onto some other page. And so, I do think he's quoted a value as presented by the assessor's office, but we really need to have, and I think Mark and I agree on this, the assessor to work with P and Z to make sure that within our own office that we have the right values. And so that's sort of an internal thing that, we'll address from that standpoint, but I think we agree on that point. And, the other is that it's not clear to me that we've thoroughly thought about other town uses that would, help us to run the government better, such as, moving the Board of Education to the 3rd floor of this building, and then perhaps, obviously improving the spaces in the Havermeyer building or whatever, and putting such organizations as Human Services, Health, and GEMS in that building, just because we wanted to have GEMS together with police and fire. It's been a long talk. So I'm just throwing something out. I'm not suggesting it or whatever, but I do think that these are the kind of things that do come up when public meetings are held. I just want to make one comment that I didn't make this morning that to me is pretty critical, because as I look at Mr. Minorski and some of the lessons that we've learned in our budget committee hearings and as we've come to decisions, is the fact that we are making many decisions as interims, and it's really impacting our fund balance. And one of the other things that I'll add to this is this something that should have had the scrutiny or should continue to have the scrutiny of being in the annual budget, whether it be, fiscal year 26, and there's the opportunity because decision day is next Tuesday, and and could be added then. So I just want to say that this is the equivalent of, because Mr. Minorski keeps talking to us about our fund balance and use of our fund balance, of use of 12.5 basis points of, mill rate increase or whatever, and that would be whether it's this year or next year, but next year perhaps it could be traded out for something else. So we can't forget that this has not had the scrutiny of the annual budget, which is, I think, unfortunate. And number two, I'm sorry. The scrutiny of the annual budget, again, is something we need to think about as we continually look at what is now a much more scarce fund balance than we've had, especially as we will have to grow that fund balance as we add additional debt. So I wanted to add that point, which we didn't talk about this morning.
Ms. Jansen, you had your hand up again?
Yes. Once again, I am supportive of the concept and your intended future steps. I, however, would appreciate written information, and knowing that you're going to the RTM and knowing the RTM the way I do, you will have various committee meetings. There are 230 members, and to have a paragraph as written to the BET perhaps can be fine for this step, but I do not think it's fine for the RTM
I totally
discussion.
agree.
So,
I mean, having been through that a number of times, I would agree. We have to give a good one-page
well,
summary.
and I think you've relayed a lot of information that could be very important and helpful to know. I understand that this is on the April RTM call, and the BET has a meeting before then. So I would like to propose that we have a motion to postpone this and take a vote, the BET take a vote on April 18, which could give it enough time to get the material together. We take a look at it, and then we vote, and then it moves on to the RTM.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Lucia Jansen and seconded by Karen Fasliotis to postpone this to the April meeting of the BET discussion on that motion, Ms. Moriarty?
I would recommend that that motion not be supported. The BET meeting on April
14.
14th comes, that's the week, I'm trying to look when the RTM committees are meeting.
That is the week that the committees meet. Sorry, that's the week that committees would meet because the RTM meets on the 21st.
I think that they're meeting the week before because of the school vacation, because RTM Education is
possible.
on April 7th. So
possible.
by it being delayed by this meeting, by the BET tonight, the RTM committees would not have the benefit of our vote.
Any other discussion? Ms.
Yeah, I would
Fasciotis?
just state that the RTM committee certainly can consider the information that was given to them in their committees. We would certainly have a vote before the RTM meeting, which would be relayed to the RTM members in time for their RTM meeting. So I don't really see that as an impediment. I think that, no, it's not the optimal situation, but certainly the information that's being conveyed to the RTM would hopefully be the same information that we receive and that we can then have a discussion on. And if we choose not to approve it at the 14th meeting, that certainly can also be conveyed to the RTM, and that could be taken off the call accordingly, and, and has been done by Alexis Vulgaris in the past. So I would not see that as an impediment. I would see that as maybe a disadvantage to the RTM, but certainly we would have everything in place before the RTM met on the following the 21st.
All right, I'm going to vote against this motion. I think this has received due scrutiny tonight. I welcome Mr. Johnson's report. I think it was very comprehensive. I'm sorry it wasn't written, but, it's a very comprehensive report. I think this is an initiative that will show the public that the committee has been very diligent and dotted the i's and crossed the t's to make sure that we all understand everything, especially in light of the chaotic air rights matter that was referred to earlier. So I think this is timely. I don't think we need to delay it. So with that, I'll call for a roll call vote on the motion to postpone SE8 to the April meeting, which was moved by Lucia Jansen and seconded by Karen Fasciotis. I'll start with Mr. Alfano.
Yes.
Mr. Kalb,
So we're voting on the motion to postpone.
correct.
I vote no.
Ms. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
No.
Ms. Moriarty,
No.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
I'm a no. Ms. Fasciotis,
Yes.
Mr. Selps,
No.
Ms. Aurora,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps,
No.
Mr. Olczak.
No.
I believe that's a 6-6 tie.
5-7.
5-7, okay. So that motion fails. Is there any further discussion on SE8 before I ask for the Budget Committee report?
I have a few more questions.
I'm sorry,
I have a few more questions for,
you have more questions?
yes, I do, on the
Okay.
original motion, not this
We're back on the
particular-
original motion for approval of SE8,
just-
so go ahead.
I just want to give feedback, Mark, to you. I think some of the concerns that some of us have is this is the first we're hearing about this. Looks like some members of this caucus, perhaps one of the members is on your committee, so they had additional information. Maybe it was shared with the other caucus. I can tell you, at least a handful of us have never gotten any information whatsoever, other than what you just presented tonight, which was,
Happy to
That would-
forward this to,
it would be great.
Mr. Fisher or Tarkington to spread.
That would be great, because I think it's just, we need to just think through, process. I don't even know all the questions we might have for you. But just thinking out loud as you're presenting, one of the things you mentioned is that confidentiality that you're bound to through purchasing. I've been on these committees as well. My understanding, again, on the confidentiality piece is that the bids are confidential, right? Once the bids themselves, right? So when you put out an RFP or a request for bid, you get 4 or 5 proposals back, and then you get the actual dollar amount or whatever that financial proposal might be in this case. The actual proposal itself is public, it's just the actual bids that are private. So when you guys do meet as a committee, the executive session should really only be held if you're discussing the merits of the finance piece of it, but not the merit of the proposal itself, right? So that ends up becoming, and just something to think about, because, and I'm not, again, that's not my forte either on the legal side. I think that might give some more transparency to the public as to what actually are the proposals. I know you're also not sure, therefore you're not discussing some of the nuances, but that would also give us some confidence as to what actually is being proposed or discussed in some of these meetings. The other thing is, why not just get an RFP for the consultant? I mean, that's typical process in town. I know the single source concept, I know we waived the rights, we did that just a few months ago for the controller search. We're not too excited about doing the waive unless it's absolutely necessary. That's what the intent of waiving an RFP is to be utilized for. There's only one or two consultants that can do this gig. We got to go. But in this case, looks like you have 4 or 5 consultants that you've identified. Why not just do the RFP, let them bid it out, or whatever that might be, and then it gives us a little bit more confidence, and it becomes more fair. Because at this point, there's also this idea that, you might gravitate towards a consultant who might be supporting a proposal you might like, right? And it's just natural. That's just something we do in real life. So I just think from a public transparency, and that's kind of the discussion that we're having here today. It's not, I think we all like the idea, the committee seems great, got a lot of smart people on there. But I think it would make a lot of people much more comfortable in town and on this board if we could do it a little bit more, with more transparency.
Certainly, we'll do the RFP among the 3, and then I'll bring it to the committee and see if we can open it up more to more people.
Well, the RFP should be put out to public, so those 3 can apply, plus
Yeah,
any more,
and
right?
everybody
And then you can decide. You don't have to take the best dollar number always, but at least there's some, and then you can say the best bid was 20,000, we only need 20,000, right? Versus, well, give us 50,000, that should be probably enough. And it's not always a dollar number, it's just the process in itself that is concerning. So just some feedback.
Ms. Tarkington.
So I just wanted to comment, to Ms. Aurora's comments there that, and we talked about it this morning, there is an RFP, what they call a tabulation, posted on the site for the Havermeyer Building redevelopment. And there are 6 names of either developers or special purpose corporations that are posted there.
You're not going to read those out, are you?
No.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make that comment, though.
We give a report of the Budget Committee.
Yes, the Budget Committee met this morning. We discussed, actually, many of the items. Mr. Johnson was present. He presented a presentation that was very similar to what he presented tonight. There have been a couple of points clarified. I think we've covered most of those points. I don't think they need to be recovered at this point in time. And the vote of the Budget Committee was 3-0-1. And the motion passed to
Thank you.
approve the $50,000 appropriation.
Any further comments? All right, I'll proceed to a roll call vote on SE 8, which has been moved by Ms. Moriarty and seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Yeah,
Sorry,
Mr. Kalb?
I beg your pardon. I was just wondering if Ms. Aurora was actually making a motion to
No, I didn't hear a
change this
motion.
to an RFP, ask that it be an RFP.
I don't,
Well, I mean, I'm happy
don't
to
think
make that
that's in
motion if
order.
you'd like to support it.
No, an amended, I thought you were making a motion to amend, no?
I mean, would you support that? I absolutely will make that motion to amend if you'll
No,
support
I
it.
An
don't-
RFP anyway for the.
I don't think that's in order, Mr. Kalb, Ms. Aurora. I don't think it's up to this committee this board to dictate how purchasing does its job.
Well, I think we just have to follow the process, Harry. So
What?
we just have to follow a process in town. You
There
don't,
is a process, but it's not up to us to dictate it.
I mean,
Well, it says, I'm sorry, but it says on the request that it's to fund the engagement to assist the evaluation for the first selectman's request for proposal for the Havemeyer Building redevelopment for $50,000. So this is a request for proposal. This is an RFP that's being the money is being requested for an RFP. So if it's not, then this description is incorrect.
Yeah, it's to evaluate the RFP proposal, the responses to the RFP that was already done.
Well, that's not what this says in the, assist the evaluation committee for the first selectman's request for proposal for the, again, I don't know what we're approving here.
Willing to do an RFP for this, right? That's not an issue.
So I mean, then would it make sense to come back to us after you have the actual number?
Why don't,
Why the no? I mean,
if
that's
you're,
typically the process, Harry. I don't know what you mean by
but
it.
if you're
This is
willing
the-
to do an RFP for this, then why don't we,
Spinning
can
out of
we
control.
possibly say, let's
Contingent on.
approve this contingent on your doing an RFP, if you're willing to do that. So we can move this thing along.
Are you suggesting a condition to this? Is that what you're suggesting?
Condition.
Thank you. But I,
They've already stated they're going to do that, though, so I mean.
Already said they're going to do it. It's the town process and procedure. If you read the purchasing manual, the town administrator is the only person who can make an exception to that, and she said they're going to do an RFP. What more do we need?
Because I heard from the proponent over here that it may just be a sole search, but it may be an RFP. I'm not sure what we're doing here. We spend a lot of time scrutinizing RFPs for our own board, and yet we have a request, a one-pager here that basically says this is a request for $50,000 for something that we don't have anything written on. And I'm just astounded at this at this board that we're contemplating approving this without understanding what exactly we're approving.
If I could just, my reading of this, that's on your call. Request for proposal, that's the 6 proposals that we have already received, and we need to continue to evaluate those. So we're asking for a consultant to help give us additional financial analysis to understand what the.
And that's different from doing an RFP. A consultant is a consultant. You're not saying that you're doing an RFP to get a consultant.
This does not say we're getting an RFP for the consultant.
So which is it? Are we getting an RFP done, or are we going to sole source and do a consultant? I'm still not clear as to what we're
I don't
doing.
think it's that difficult. I mean, we'll get an RFP for the 3, and we'll open it up to some other consultants. I mean, if that pleases the board, it's not a difficult situation.
Justification wording answers what they're doing, not necessarily how they're doing it, but what they're doing. The fact that the to and from is a abbreviated explanation, I think, is your point of confusion.
I'd like to move this to a roll call vote, please. I'll go in reverse order. Mr. Olczak,
I'm going to pass for the moment, please. Come back to me.
yep. Mr. Deschamps,
Yes.
Ms. Aurora,
No.
Mr. Selps,
Yes.
Ms. Vasiliotis,
No.
I'm a yes. Ms. Tarkington,
Abstain.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Jansen,
No.
Mr. Kalb,
yes,
Mr. Alfano,
No.
Mr. Olczak.
So I'm going to vote in favor of this, but I hope you take away that there's some concern here. And first, please get information out in writing ASAP. And I would also counsel you that the way you, so I've got to be careful about the way you look for people to help you, the consultant, or do an
Excuse me,
RFP.
can I
just wanna
suggest you
finish
take this offline and have a conversation with them directly?
Fine.
Thank you.
I'll do that.
Okay, so you have the BET approval.
Great, thank you very
by a
much.
vote of 7-4-1. Okay. We move on to SE 9, which is a legal settlement of Lesser versus Gilman from the Selectmen.
Board of the Law Committee.
I think you,
Gilman versus-
I move that we approve SE 9 from the Selectmen for $5,719.73.
Are we going to have
as
a
a sum.
report first of the Law Department?
No,
Just move the
normally we
motion?
move and then we do the
The
report.
proper thing is to get things on the table first.
And so I just, moving it along, I just moved it.
Could I have a second,
Second.
please?
Second.
Mr. Alfano seconded. Ms. Tarkington moved. SE 9 in the amount of 5,719.72. A report of the Law Committee, please.
Yes, the Law Committee met with the Law Department. This involved a motor vehicle accident, which resulted in the damage that you see here. A town plow was plowing out the parking lot in one of the fire departments and plowed into this gentleman's car, causing the damage. So there was clear liability, and the amount is as it's set forth in the proposed.
Did any other committee, did the Budget Committee?
No, this
we
was,
did not
we
take
don't
it
normally
because of the
take,
amount.
because of the amount.
Right.
We did not take it up.
Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Ms. Tarkington and Mr. Alfano to approve SE 9. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? See none, that's 12-0-0.
Samantha, could I get some water? Sorry,
No,
I didn't want to get up.
no worries. I almost need it too. Actually, Samantha, I would love one, please, too.
And I would too, please.
Yeah, this meeting's going on a little longer. So the comptroller's report, please.
Good evening. Just a quick announcement before I start. We have a new employee in the department, Leonora, over here. And
Thank you very much.
let me give you a little history before I tell you her role in the department.
I have one. Thank you.
We've had for many, many years a .71 employee. That's 25 hours, over 35 hours. The young man in the middle of COVID abandoned the job and never came back, not for health reasons. He just did not want to work any longer in the department. So we had this opening for a year or two. And at the same time, if I may, Samantha announced that she'll be leaving on maternity leave. Her due date is in July. So we went out and looked for a replacement for that position. And Leonora, who likes to be called Leo, is currently being trained to back up Samantha as the minute taker, and will be filling in going forward. And during the period of leave and in the future, she'll be much of a floater throughout the department. The original position did a lot of the archiving and was the backup for accounts payable, et cetera. So we do have that need. If you've followed the department over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a tremendous amount of turnover. We've had like 4 different accounts payable supervisors. We lost people to the Board of Education, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like to welcome Leo, who will be the backup in going forward in the accounts payable. Having said that, the controller's report, as I said last...
Excuse me, Peter, if I could, do you also have news about?
I can't speak to them. I can't speak
No,
in public.
about the woman who was out on medical leave. Is she back?
She's... I think HIPAA prevents me from talking about this. Yeah,
You don't know when she's back? Okay,
hopefully next Monday.
okay.
No, I can't go there with HIPAA.
Okay, sorry.
I forgot, As I said last month and this month, the highlight of the controller's report is we're in the middle of the budget process, and I wish you all luck, April 1st. I'm looking forward to it. Roland's looking forward to it. The team's looking forward to it. So, no, good luck next Monday. Decision day, hopefully it's just decision day one and it goes somewhat smoothly. Having said that, we also, we do, for the first year, we're going to have, as noted, and you all know, two public hearings, one for the Board of Education on Wednesday at Central Middle School, and one Thursday for other than school topics on Thursday here in the Town Hall. I'll stop there, and I'll open it up to any questions on the Controller's report.
Any questions for Mr. Menarski?
I'll make a motion to approve the controller's report.
I'll second that.
I think it's,
Accept
you intend to accept the
Accept
report.
the report.
And I second it.
It's been moved by Ms. Moriarty, seconded by Ms. Tarkington to accept the Controller's report. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's 12-0-0. If you would give the Treasurer's report, please.
Yeah, again, we talked at length this morning with Nisha Arora in the Investment Advisory Committee, but there was a number of people who weren't there. Other than going line by line, I'd say the biggest reportable topic would be the capital projects, where we've got $107 million. I signed supplement number 4 this morning for over $4 million, so we're off and running with Central Middle School. So that'll be the highlight of the spending for the next year and a half.
Right.
2 years. But I'll open it up to any questions on the Treasurer's report.
Any questions? Could I have a motion to accept?
I move we accept the Treasurer's report.
It's been moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Moriarty to accept the Treasurer's report. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's 12-0-0. Thank you, sir. We move now to a standing committee report from the HR committee, please.
Yes, the HR committee voted 4-0 to approve an RFP for a benchmarking and additional study. My understanding is that we do have money earmarked for this, so there's no request for any monies at this time.
I don't believe any funds were ever passed by the BET for any such study.
Well, I know that we carried over some monies from last year, so I'm not sure where we are on that.
There was a request at the end of June 30th, 2024. None of the 150, let me go upstairs. We did, at June 30th last year, we had 150,000 of the A130 51490, which is Finance Department consultant line item. We gave 72,000 of it. It was not fully spent to Tom Klein to do some cybersecurity related work. There was an approval for 78,000 of the for a study for MC-related project, which was never clearly identified. It was subsequent to the RFP for the $45,000 from 2 years ago. Of that 78,000, there was subsequently, you approved between 30 and 32, I don't remember the exact number, to
for the
replace
search.
the
32 for the search.
controller's search. So basically, you could say technically, you approved as a board the $78,000. So I guess there's 40-something thousand left of that 78.
You know the meeting at which we approved that?
That would have been probably either the June or the July of '24.
Okay, thank you.
I have a
Ms. Moriarty?
clarification. That, when you say approved, we encumbered the funds for a study. I don't think this board approved a scope for that study.
Correct.
And so that would be the next step, I think, in the process, is that this board should, the full board should review the RFP that the HR committee has developed before anything else happens.
I don't recall if that was done for the IAC study. I don't believe that this full board approved the RFP for that, but I could be mistaken.
I believe we did, but it would be really, especially in this particular area where when we approved the encumbrance of the funds, it was because there was the potential for a study, but there was still a lot of discussion over what that would need to be. And I
Correct.
think it would be prudent management that all 12 of us have that understanding and an ability to discuss what's being proposed.
How does the HR committee intend to issue this RFP?
It would go through Pete, as usual.
Would not go through purchasing.
Well, it goes through purchasing through Pete.
Okay, I would, I'm definitely going to take a look back at the record because I remember it being an encumbrance and not an approval to use. So I think that's an important distinction. Do you intend to share this with the BET?
Be more than happy to.
I think at a meeting where there's been calls for transparency, in essence.
You're the one to talk about transparency. Okay.
Out of order, Ms. Vasiliotis, out of
Okay,
order.
I'm out of order.
Your committee has gone through a process
And
without any,
we've had public meetings where everybody
Nothing-
was able to attend, and
We're
we've had
interrupting.
many discussions in the public meetings that everybody was able to attend, and now you're saying that this is not a transparent process?
no
Give
documentation
me
was
a
shared.
break.
No documentation was shared, no packets were posted, nothing.
If you had come to our last meeting, I would have been happy to share it with you.
I would, if I could just clarify
Ms.
what's...
Moriarty.
Thank you. I would just like to clarify what's expected. And, I think, and we'll all go back to that meeting of when money was encumbered. However, regardless of whether that motion clearly said encumbered versus approved, I think this board should expect an opportunity as a board to review and discuss the scope of that work. And I would like the chair to follow and the controller to follow that process.
And I would ask also that it be a consistent policy, since apparently some RFPs are not reviewed by this board, but now others are. So if we are going to start doing this, we need to we have a consistent policy so that everything that goes through this board with an RFP, including what was presented today, quite frankly, by the Havemeyer Committee, be reviewed.
I just focusing on the BET work specifically, if you can identify what RFPs have not gone through the entire board, that would be helpful.
I believe the IAC came through after they got the bids, and then we looked at the proposal.
Okay, that's me. You believe, let's look at it, but that's one. After how many RFPs?
I don't know how many RFPs there have been.
Perhaps the building committees.
Just to be clear, is it the understanding of the chair that no funds will be spent on this encumbrance without a future vote of the BET?
No, we would get the
And I'm
proposals.
addressing to the chair.
Well, obviously not, though, David, so I don't really understand the
I'm
question.
addressing it to the chair because I don't know myself whether an encumbrance from a previous year constitutes an approval for the current year. It's, extremely unclear to me. And the scope of what's being considered has not been discussed at all. As far as I'm concerned, it's not been evaluated orally in a written way or otherwise. And so I do think it's appropriate for the full BET to vote on it. There's no question that I think it should be voted on unless I miss a step here.
I'm going to look back, figure out what exactly we did back in June or July of last year. And, based on that, go further. But if all it was encumbered, it would be my judgment that it's not authorized to be spent. I'd like to move on if we could. Mr. Selps, you have a report of the Old Greenwich Building Committee?
Yes, colleagues, I am pleased to report that earlier this month, the state of Connecticut approved the plans for the Old Greenwich School renovation project. It took a little longer than the building committee hoped for, but we are going to be sending out bid packages on or around April 1st. We expect to have the bids in by the end of April, and we are planning to break ground with the groundbreaking ceremony April 23rd, to which you are all invited. And we continue to be on progress with that project. So it's a good news report.
Thank you. Next item would be approval of the meeting minutes, February 24th, 2025. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Alfano moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Moriarty seconds. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's 12-0-0. My only comment about, in the chair report is just, as Peter noted, the 2 hearings we have this week, Wednesday evening at Central at 7 o'clock, and Thursday evening here in the town hall meeting room also at 7 o'clock.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question of you on the budget process? Our decision day is a week from tomorrow. Do we expect to have an amendment packet sufficiently prior to that meeting so that board members have an ability to understand what might happen?
I'm working as hard as I can to satisfy that, but I can't promise you when.
Okay, I just
Hopefully Friday.
like to make the plea that if all of us can get our work done so that we all have time to evaluate what the impact of potential changes could be, that would be really
Can I just
I
ask?
suggest everyone take note of that request.
Can I just ask a question, Harry? on
Yes.
that? Have there been any amendments that Ms. Moriarty, that your caucus has proposed and been shared?
We are working on those, but we can make a Friday deadline without a problem.
Would you be able to share that with all of the BET? Because I'm just not sure what's exactly being passed around.
Nothing's been passed around. I think that we should all share amendments simultaneously.
That's been the
And
practice in the
That's been the
past.
practice. We submit them to the finance department, they collate them,
I
and then
understand, I'm just
distribute them.
asking you for clarification. Has anything been shared to date from your caucus? And I think you've answered that, no.
Not
You're
to
planning
date.
on sharing?
Today's Monday,
So as
yes.
of Monday, today, you have not shared anything. That's just the clarification I'm asking
That is
for.
correct, but
Okay.
we have had discussions, which I don't believe your caucus has, if we're working by
No,
caucus.
We have
I
had
wouldn't
discussions,
characterize
yeah.
it as that, so.
But can we get agreement that would agree to a date? My colleagues seem to be, focused on process, and the chair seems to be trying to work with his caucus on a date. Can we get agreement on a date tonight?
I'm sorry, I had 2 conversations going on here.
I was just saying that I appreciate the fact that the chair is working to accommodate what's been historic practice, which is to have a date where we all come together and share potential amendments. And I'm wondering if we could just get agreement amongst the group tonight about what that date would be so we can come prepared for decision day.
We hope to have things ready Friday. That's all I can say.
Appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Is there anything else?
I just have a public service announcement. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we will be celebrating Greek Independence Day with Greek dancers
Hear,
in the front of the town hall, raising the Greek flag, and everybody is welcome to attend.
Here, here.
No, but you'll get a Greek flag.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded by Ms. Tarkington, and Mr. Alfano seconded. Without objection, it's 12-0-0.